So I'm here with Don Soderberg and we are checking out some snakes. And here we have a microscale. So what is a microscale, Don?
Microscale is a recessively inherited mutation discovered by Barbara V. I'll say her last name V because I would mispronounce it and it might be insulting. Anyway, she discovered the gene. It just hatched in her collection like so many of the mutations. And it basically is just tiny, tiny scales. The original name was micropave because, especially over in Europe, a lot of the little townships and stuff still have those river stone paved roads. And that's what it looked like to her because you can see the scales are not shingle, they're not arranged in a shingle pattern of any kind, like on a roof where they overlap each other. There's just little granular looking scales of all different shapes, usually some form of round or oval. And there they get the name microscale.
And the head sort of looks like a scaleless.
Right. Originally, and you're probably aware that a few years ago I crossed a scaleless with a microscale and discovered that they are allelic. Both of the mutations appear on the same DNA locus. And so there is a relationship between them. And of course, when we looked at the head of these and we looked at the head of some of the scaleless, we said, wow, that looks just like a. And so, sure enough, when you breed one of these to a scaleless, you're going to get each and some that are both. And too few of us have bred them at this time to be able to say exactly what's always going to happen. But the 3 times I did it, I got some scaleless, some microscales, and some that were obviously both. So they are related, and you noticed it, or you mentioned it when you just noticed that the head looked just like some of the scaleless. And of course, it's got the guard scales, I call them, around the mouth, all the fragile places where they would be prone to infection on the scaleless and the microscales. This particular mutation protected those areas with scales. And we're really grateful for that.
So on the belly we still have.
Yeah, and we still have the scales on the belly. So one of the things you and I were talking about earlier, Craig, was the lavender and how the scaleless lavenders are not purple. They're not lavender because the iridophores that were in the scales that rendered that lavender or violet look are missing. So, but in this one, if you put lavender with it, and of course nobody's done it yet here in the States, but maybe in Europe, because there are scales, you should have iridophores, so you should end up with a bluish violet colored snake, since the scales are not missing.
And you have another color one there?
Yeah, this was the first microscale butter that was ever produced in the U.S. We hatched this one not quite 3 years ago, and I don't even know if there's any more since this because there's so many frontiers on a new mutation like this, but this is one that we hatched, and so far it's the only butter we've hatched. But and the colors are just now starting to get richer, probably from carotenoids, that real extra rich yellow that we see on aneries and snows and stuff. That could be why that's a lot more color concentrated there at the what's called the ventral keel or the ventral heel, where the sides meet the ventrum. But
And that's from their diet of mice?
Probably just about any rodent or bird that they would consume has carotenoids or carotenes in their body, and it's not that every snake retains and expresses that rich carotene color, but the ones that do, they get more and more of it each time because as they mature, they have eaten more and more mice, and therefore they have collected more and more of the carotenoids. But so apparently this is one. Now, that's another subject, but if we can get a close-up, there are different shapes to these scales. They're not just all oval or all round. You can see, and in fact, in certain body zones, you get real elongate scales that are almost 2 or 3 times the length of some of these. Some of these start to shingle overlap just a little bit, but not quite. So basically, when these eat, you can see, and look there by the tail, see those long ones? So basically, when these eat and their body is a little more swollen, you see more skin. So these are prone to dehydration in our cages, just like the scaleless corns. So you should have an extra water bowl in their cage, and you should never let them get too dried out because they are prone to lethal cases of dehydration. So that's something you don't see. This is probably the first time it's ever been videographed, but I've had a few pictures of this snake on the internet after it first hatched and through maturity. I think they're going to be real popular because basically they're going to add a new scale to every single color and pattern we have in corn snakes. So there will be thousands of different new discoveries and new mutation compounds and morph compounds with this scale. It just offers a whole new family. You might say in the family tree of corns, it's not just new branches of opportunity to change corn snakes. It's like a whole new tree.